If you've been listening to the podcast and curious about how you can work with me in a professional capacity, we're hosting an open house. I'm going to pull back the curtains of how I structure my work, how people get results, and more importantly, I want to hear about you. I want to learn about you, and I want you to experience my coaching and the community before you even invest in it. So head on over to Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com/join and learn about the coaching open house. Have you ever met a woman that just inspired the shit out of you? And maybe there's something inside of you that wants to be birthed. I truly believe that who you are attracted to, the things that you love about people, like a moth to a flame, or maybe it's the opposite, the things that trigger you about certain people, or maybe the things that you find you're jealous of. I believe whether it's jealousy or a desire to be closer to somebody, the reason why that is because there's something inside of you that wants to be birthed, or there's a connection there, like-minded values or interest. And Miki is one of those people for me. She came into my ecosystem not too long ago. I actually started seeing her ads online, and I was like, there is something about this woman. And then ironically, her team pitched to be on the Emotionally Uncomfortable podcast. And so as I started doing my research, I was very drawn to Miki's creativity, her desire to make a social impact, but how she lives big, and she doesn't apologize for her big dreams or her desires. And she can still attend to her role in her mothering and her motherhood, still attend to her own mind and body and soul while growing massive, massive companies. Miki Agrawal is a social entrepreneur, an advisor, and investor who uses creativity and disruptive innovation to challenge the status quo and change culture. She is the founder of several acclaimed social enterprises, Wild, THINX, and TUSHY, collectively valued at over 200 million. She is also the author of the #1 best-selling books, Do Cool Shit and Disrupt Her, not Disruptor, Disrupt Her. Miki was named Fast Company's Most Creative People, Young Global Leader by the World Economic Forum, and Inc. magazine's Most Impressive Women Entrepreneurs. Miki sits on the board of Conscious Capitalism and advises several startups. This woman inspires me, and you're going to hear in the podcast, we talk about guilt. We share our stories about healing our bodies and also just leaning into the fullness of who we want to be while building businesses, but also while raising children. So I hope you enjoy. I encourage you to take a screenshot of this episode and tag me at Heather Chauvin on Instagram. And you can tag Miki as well. You can find her on Instagram at MikiAgrawal. I know that was long, but it's Miki Agrawal. So, or just tag me on Instagram and I will reshare it. And as always, I love when you send me DMs on Instagram. Let me know what was your biggest takeaway from this episode in particular. My goal here on Emotionally Uncomfortable is to help you step into your power, whether that is in your role as a caregiver, whether that's in your role in your career, doesn't matter what you're doing. But more importantly, just helping you feel alive. All right, let's dive in. Miki, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here with you, Heather.
Yeah. The show is called Emotionally Uncomfortable, and it's really about feeling your feelings and also doing the things you want to do. And the reality behind that of how we kind of find ourselves, stay grounded in who we are while also being the disruptors, right? Like doing the thing we want to do. So I am so curious. You've accomplished a lot in your personal and professional life. What is that push and pull for you? And anything that you want to tell that woman that's sitting there feeling like she's drowning, but she has big dreams and desires inside of her?
Yeah. I mean, I think oftentimes it's just like, there's this gender bias study that was conducted by the Gender Bias Learning Project, and they talk about this double bind gender bias. And I don't want to gender this at all, but there's something to be said about women who are in the workforce, have big dreams, and, and are judged for not being moms that are like 24/7 and being like completely. And then the women who are stay-at-home moms are judged for not working. And so there's like double bind judgment that happens. And so what follows that is a lot of guilt. And, oh, I'm guilty. I feel guilty because I have dreams of my own, even by being a mom. Mm-hmm. Or I feel guilty that I'm not doing anything with my life. I'm just being a mom, and there's this like guilt that we just live, this kind of a guilt culture that we live in. And I think the first step towards sort of like really moving forward is to eliminate that guilt and to just say, hey, like, I'm going to allocate some of my time to being the best mom that I could be in this very moment. And I'm going to allocate some of my time to pursuing my dreams. And both are okay. And I've been writing music too, actually. They've written 17 songs this past year and last year. And one of the songs is called It All Exists. And the idea that you can simultaneously want one thing and also want something else at the same time. It all exists and it's all okay. And there's this weird thing that it's black or white. We have to choose. And it's just not. We get to decide moment by moment what we want. And then of course, allocate time to the choice that we made, which is to be a mom in the best way possible without the guilt. And so what I've done in my life has been to, just like building companies, is to set up systems for myself personally, where I have support. And I know like everyone, not everyone can have a ton of support, but even if it's a couple of hours a day, everyone can have, if you're working, you can afford some support a couple of hours a day to like take care of your dishes, take care of your stuff, we feel like we have to do everything. Yeah. And it's not true. Like I think that there's a huge business around nannies for moms. And
100%. I'm like, that is 100%. Yeah. It's so old school not to have support.
That's it. And the idea, like, we can have a nanny too, not just our kids, but we need nannies, and I need a nanny. Like, it's not like, and we put a lot of times a lot of pressure on our partners or pressure on ourselves when just a couple of hours a day of support, I get, 4 or 5 hours a day of support during the week. Outside of school, outside of here, going to school. And there's an overlap. So she can do some of my stuff, which I need her to take care of, which just, and net, it's not like, what's it worth? It's like, we tend to like, I'm a saver. I'm a big saver. I don't believe in spending more than we earn. I've always been that way. When I was, a starving entrepreneur building my businesses slowly, I still managed to save a lot of money, even if I was making very, very little. But I always focused on the things that mattered. It's like, I'm not going to buy the shoes or the purse. I don't have a purse. I actually don't own a single purse, but, and I own a few pair of comfy shoes, but like, I care about body work. I do body work every week for my body. Yes. I eat really healthy food, and I have this help that supports me so that I'm able to be free and more open and more spacious to take care of the things I have to take care of with full octane, and like give all of myself to the cool project I'm working on, or being there attentive to my baby.
I love this conversation. And I love that we just dove like right into the guilt and right into those feelings and all the things that kind of block us from moving forward. Yeah. And what I'm hearing you say is it's really about the quality, like it's the essence of like those things that matter to you that you invest in. What what is it within you or that part of you that has giving yourself permission to do those things?
It's a choice, and it's an active choosing that we have to, I think, have to do. Mm-hmm. And I think without that active choosing of like, I'm not going to feel guilty about receiving support, asking for help, or allocating X amount of time, present time, phones away with my baby, even if it's X amount of hours a day of focused time. That's all they care about is you being present.
Yeah.
They'll feel the presence. They don't want you to be doing multitasking. So like, it's been hard for me lately, just as I've transitioned to single motherhood recently, which has been a very interesting thing for me as well. And just in that process, there's been a little bit of overlap of like recalibrating the multitasking with being present with my kid and managing my businesses and the home and taking care of everything. And so there's been like, there's been some challenges there, but then there's also the beautiful thing of like, okay, so now like there's split time, I get half the time with my kid and half the time with myself. And that's actually the New York Times actually wrote an article about kind of splitting time, and having your kid half the time and being there deeply present and having half the time to really focus on myself is actually quite a remarkable proposition. So
like co-parenting and
like beautifully co-parenting, but then getting half of your time to work on, focus on yourself, and half the time to focus on your kid is quite special.
Yeah. I've leaned into that process too. And I'm married, and I said to my husband, like, this is your weekend. This is my weekend. Yeah. Like, what do you want to do? And really giving yourself permission to step into that space, right? Feelings are always going to be present, but re-grounding yourself, leaning in, nurturing yourself. When you were telling that story, it reminded me of something. I have 3 boys. They're 18. They keep changing their ages. Yeah. So I was 18 when I had my oldest. And so now that he's that age, it freaks me out a little bit. But yes, I have an 18-year-old.
That's amazing. I think that's brilliant. Honestly, like the more I think about it, I'm like, having kids young makes because you have the energy of it. Somehow
you're a little naive too, right? So when you get older, you're like, oh wow, this is more terrifying.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's 18. My other 2 are 13 and 10, all boys. And my oldest was, talking to me about something. And in my head, I'm like, okay, what does he need from me? What does he? And I just said it out loud. And I said, what do you need from me? This is going to make me cry. And he said, I just need you to be my mom. I just need you to listen. And at that moment, I just realized all he needed was presence. No fixing.
They need an ear. They need to like hug. They need to be just there. And like yesterday, my son Hero threw a bit of a tantrum, I think, because we gave him a couple of cookies and he doesn't usually have sugar. He's like bouncing off the walls.
Yeah.
He was throwing a tantrum about not taking a bath and how he just, was saying like, I want to do what I want to do. And, and it's just like, you just, like, and so I said, okay. So I just literally just sat on the floor and just sat down and just stopped talking, not trying to solve like, well, what if we did this? What if we did that? What if we did this? I just let him calm himself down. And he started taking a deep breath. He goes, and I was like, okay, what if we take a bath in here? Because he had to take a bath in the main house. We were in our little casita, and he goes, okay. And so I just gave him 5 minutes of just quiet presence, of just being there with him, not fixing, not trying, not saying anything. And then he just took his clothes off and jumped in the bath. And it was like, wow. It's just such a reminder that sometimes like way less is more.
That's my like mantra or focus for this year is just doing less better, which is just being 100% present. And it's fascinating whether we see it externally in our children or within ourselves, of truly seeing ourselves or listening and just giving yourself that moment of space of what you're resisting or avoiding, or what you think you don't have the time or capacity for. And then you're present and it's like, thank you. And then it's gone. And then you get to move on to the next moment.
That's it. It's like just being there is enough, And there's this, my friend Karin, she's from Cameroon in Africa. And and it's French. I'm from Montreal, so we speak French to each other. And when she walks into a room, instead of saying hi in Cameroon, they say je suis là, which means I'm here. And it's like, I'm here. Like, I'm not anywhere else. I'm here. Je suis là. Like, I like, instead of saying hi, and it's like such a beautiful thought around presence. It's like, I'm nowhere else. I'm here. I'm with you. I'm not on my phone. I'm just here. Je suis là. And it's beautiful.
I love that. I have a French last name. My children speak French. I do not. And it is such a beautiful language. They're in full French and I know nothing.
Are you French Canadian?
I am.
Oh, French Canadian women are babes. As is Exhibit A, right?
Thank you. It's like I'm in the generation that lost it, and so I'm trying to bring it back to my children and be like, "Come on, let's go." But yeah, they all speak fluent French, and I'm like, "Oh, this is beautiful." I love it when we go places. I'm like, "Translate for me." It's such a beautiful language. I want to talk about business. People love talking about the accomplishments and the quote unquote success. Tell me about, I'm big on social entrepreneurship, like giving back. And I think women have a big heart for that. Can you just, what do you want the world to know about social entrepreneurship and making a big impact? And maybe you see a correlation with that and parenting.
Yeah. I mean, I think the future of entrepreneurship is social entrepreneurship. I don't think in this day and age, you can actually stand to really care about anything unless there is some mission aligned to it and some give back and some deep reason for being and a deep purpose behind it. And I think it's easy. I mean, I always say, please don't start another t-shirt company because it's just one of many versus like solving a real problem that the world needs. And I think that's so much more motivating and invigorating to like, again, to say, okay, I'm not going to spend this time with my kid. I'm going to go and like solve a real problem in the world that I think needs solving. And there's a lot of, purposeful energy behind that. And, for me, like all of my companies that I've, built have been with my teams have been social enterprises. And when we're like at the depths of like how the F we're going to solve this problem, this business problem, we just close our eyes, or I just close my eyes and remember like, oh, wow. Like for TUSHY, for example, my current company, we have helped save 4 million trees from getting flushed down the toilet. We have funded the build out of clean toilets for 60,000 families in India. We have funded tons of resoiling and reforestry projects all over South America. We only have 40 harvests left. Like we have to solve the soil problem. Like the fact that we're cutting down trees and wiping our butts with them is so archaic. It doesn't make any sense when our planet is heating and heating and heating up. We need to cool the planet. There's so many things that need our time and attention. And if we can build a business that deeply supports that, that's purpose. And that creates like more motivation to keep going.
So have you always been this way? Like as a small child, like to really like lead with purpose in everything that you do?
I mean, I think I grew up in a very, international household with my mother being from Japan and my father being from India and growing up in French Canada. And so I think as a result, like I grew up with tons of perspectives all the time. Like I got the Japanese perspective, the Indian perspective, the Canadian perspective, the American perspective. And it was always like a debate. And so it was always interesting to think about the world in a very unique way. Like the Japanese and the Indian and the American and the Canadian think about things very, very differently. And they're like, well, sure, you're solving a problem here, but like it's a huge, bigger problem in India, or it's a bigger problem in developing worlds. And so like I've become more aware traveling. I've been to India 6 times and, to be like, wow, there's such a disparity amongst the wealthy and the poor and like what people go through. And, my own father for a number of years when he was a kid, his dad was an entrepreneur, there were some moments in his life where he didn't have access to a clean toilet. My own father in India, and he still has nightmares about it sometimes to this day. And to know that, my company has funded the build out of toilets for 60,000 families in India. And I didn't even know that about my dad. Wow. I just did that. It's kind of like this, this like ancestral healing in some way that just happened through business. And so, yeah, I think it's a really important practice to look at things from different perspectives and to know that, hey, like anyone can solve a problem if I just put my mind to it.
I love it. Do you have those moments where you're like in it and you're like, I want to quit? How do you get back to that state of purpose? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think there are moments where I just want to like throw, like, I have a punching bag right here.
I saw that. I love it.
Where it's like, there's sometimes moments where you're just like, just got to get some like energy out, and it's nice. And it also looks cool and all that. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's been moments where I want to quit because I'm just not a quitter. Mm-hmm. But there have been moments where I was like, I need to take some time off, or I need to take like just the weekend to catch my breath and be with friends and like hang out and have fun and like refuel, And I think we oftentimes run ourselves ragged and burn ourselves out and don't refuel. This is why for me, I do a lot of body work every week. And again, it isn't like, it's all about allocation of our resources, right? Like, I'm very, frugal in some ways, and I'm very generous in other ways. And one of the ways I'm generous with myself is taking care of my body, taking care of what I put inside my body, taking care of how I'm taking my again, the body work, and giving myself enough time to be with my friends and laugh and be in community. And like, that community is such an important thing about living a happy life and healthy life. And a lot of people isolate when they have kids. They move to their single family home, middle of nowhere in a suburb. And then they kind of start to isolate. Oh, I can't make it. It's 30 minutes away. And by the time you should make excuses, I still like, even if there are moments where I'm tired, I'm like, I'm going to have dinner party on Friday night, invite people over, cook a big vat of soup, and then have everyone make it potluck. Like on Friday I had, on Saturday night I had, 12 friends over, and everyone cooked a big meal. And everyone was just so filled up at the end of it. And it was like, it was so nice. Brought people here, even if it could have been like, it's tired, I'm just gonna catch my breath. It's like, community is important. Sleeping is important. Taking care of our inside of our bodies and outside of our bodies is important. We just have to maintain that every week. Like, it's not something that, like, that's just deep maintenance that we have to do for ourselves.
Post cancer, 9 years before that, I was reading the books, I was doing all the things. And I was like, I need a strategy. Like, how can I make this practical? And I started putting those things on my calendar first.
Yeah.
And then work, life, everything went around it. And then it's like, no. I go on my calendar first, my mind, my body, my soul. And then, you have resistance. You're like, oh, I got to do this. But then, and I'm like, then I get to play with that resistance and go, come back to self. A quick word from today's sponsor. And the sponsor is myself. I'm hosting a coaching open house. Head on over to Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com/join. It's 2023. If you have no idea how you are going to take what you're learning inside of this podcast and transition it into your own life, this is your opportunity to lean in, to learn how I actually get my clients results and who they need to become. And I'm going to show you the real behind the scenes. I'm not trying to sell you any like secret tips or strategies. You got to do the emotionally uncomfortable work, but it's actually not as hard as you think. So if you've been listening to the podcast and you've been wanting to work with me, but you're not actually sure how I work with people, head on over to heatherchauvin.com/join and check out our open house. The body is such a beautiful, like, what is your relationship to your body today and how you create that?
I love that you're a survivor. I mean, I've had a deep hyperthyroid condition that I battled and fought and beat. That was like, the doctors were like, take your thyroid out, do radioactive iodine therapy. You're going to have to take 4 pills a day for the rest of your life, like all of the same stuff. that I've been hearing over and over again. And I was like, no, I'm going to go the functional medicine route. I'm going to do elimination diet for 2 years. I'm going to start doing, going to see, like doing coaching, therapy, getting stuff that's kind of bottled inside stress out of my body multiple times a week, a couple times a week. So I started seeing a coach. I'm going to do, again, like take the vitamins to fortify myself. I'm going to sleep. I'm going to get body work done. And I'm going to take the stress out of my body. And what does that look like beyond those things? Is delegating, things like I don't need to do, but like thought like, oh, like I'm not going to spend the extra, a couple bucks to do this or do that. And you kind of giving up on you end up abandoning myself versus, what I'm so used to doing. Right. And it's just paid dividends. Like I've healed my thyroid. I'm healthier than ever. I'm like, I don't, like I started TUSHY, my bidet company, because of my thyroid condition, because I was pooping, and a byproduct of hyperthyroidism was pooping a lot. And
I heard you say that on another interview. You were like, my butt was red, like it was raw.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was raw. It was tender. It was like, oh, I had to jump in the shower. And so my husband, now baby daddy, got me a bidet, for Valentine's Day. And it completely changed my life. And I was like, I need to make this better and bring it to America and, create a market for it because it's too important. It healed me and it made my life like so much better and less painful. I've healed it now. I don't have the pooping issues anymore, but for 2 years I did it. It was really, really hard.
I know it's not easy to go through all of that, but I love the silver lining of the other side of like the moments and the stories of like, how can I, and transitioning into meaning and fullness, right? It's not about
and also building a business out of it, right? So it's like not only did it solve my major problem, but it was like an aha moment. Like, how are bidets not in America? I'm half Japanese, half Indian. Bidets exist, in like all over Asia, all over Europe, all over South America, Middle East, and yet in this country, it's just kind of like frowned upon. And so, like, let's change that. Let's shift that mentality. How do we entertain and educate people on the benefits of a bidet? And and we've sold over almost 1.5 million TUSHY bidets, and it's changed people's lives. And so our problems can become, it's like turning lemons into lemonade, over and over again is true.
And I've seen your ads. The creativity infused in the brand is amazing, and everything that you're doing. Can you I know we could talk forever and ever and ever, but you have books, you have products, you have companies. What are you up to these days? Where do you want to point people and bring them into your world?
Yeah. Well, first of all, very important fact, please don't go to tushy.com. It's a very graphic porn site. Go to hellotushy.com.
Hello, Tushy.
Hello, Tushy. Thank you. Because it's a grab. Yeah. Don't go to tushy.com. That cookie will follow you. So, the next project is also in the poop space, but it's in the baby poop space.
Oh, cool.
And, it's harnessing nature to solve the global plastic crisis and baby poop. So we'll have another conversation about it, but it's perfect. It's a very, very exciting project that's coming up next. And it's named after my son, Hero.
I love that. And tell us about your books.
Yeah. So the book Disrupt Her and Do Cool Shit. Do Cool Shit came first, and it's really written because I just couldn't find books that can take you from 0 to 1 starting your business and like your dream life. And sort of like, I would read autobiographies by Richard Branson and Tony Hsieh and all these epic entrepreneurs, but they would say, and then I raised $1 million, then I did this. And you're like, but how did you raise your first $25,000? Forget your first $1 million. Like, and what email did you send? How did you even attract people to even pitch to? Like, how do you even pitch a business? Like, what did you do like to go truly from 0 to 1? So it's like a story-driven, puts you in the scene, kind of fast-paced, page-turning book, but gives you the step-by-step of like what email I sent to potential investors, like what email I sent to get to people to come to my meeting of the minds, even brainstorm my business idea in the first place. When I had an idea but didn't know where to begin, so how did I craft and bring the right people in the room to help me brainstorm my idea where it was a win-win for both parties? So all the little things from starting and growing and building, getting PR, marketing, like anything that you've never done before, like truly the granular things I did to really build the first pieces of my business to go from step 0 to step 1 is written in Do Cool Shit. Mm-hmm. The subtitle is Quit Your Day Job, Start Your Own Business, and Live Happily Ever After. And then Disruptor came second because in building my companies, THINX and TUSHY and now Hero and even Wild, my restaurants, which are, by the way, still exist in New York, and you're more than welcome to go. And anyone listening, first drink on me, just mention you heard the podcast, the Wilds in the West Village. It's gluten-free farm table pizza.
I was just in New York last week.
Well, next time go and first drink on me, first meal on me, or first pizza on me. We specialize in gluten-free pizza.
Nice.
Yeah. And so Disruptor is really it's a manifesto that really, really looks at disrupting all of our beliefs and the fact that all of our beliefs are truly made up. Mm-hmm. All the systems that we live in are made up. Money is a made up energy exchange. Careers are made up. I mean, the way our family structures are made up, romantic structures are completely made up. Mm-hmm. Every single thing in our life has been brought to us by some ancient, old, traditional way of doing something mostly by men in the patriarchal conditions of thinking. So if all of that is time is made up, right? Like everything is made up. So if everything is made up, wow, like how can we invent exchange of energy? How can we invent relationships? How can we invent careers? Like how can we see friendship, family, like all the major areas in our life? How can we invent new possibilities that speak to us, that's true to us, that still supports the world and the people? It's not just selfish, but it's truly authentic. It's a disruptive way of thinking. And oftentimes it's scary to think disruptively. It's easy to just stand in line and do what everyone else is doing. But when we're doing things disruptively and living in our authentic way, it just lights us up, and it actually creates more opportunity, more abundance, more everything that we've ever wanted, because we're true to ourselves. We're not just standing in line and waiting a post. We're doing it our way.
Yeah.
And Disruptor is about that. It's a manifesto of a modern woman.
I can tell that's like what gets you excited. It's like we come alive, right? We become ourselves, and that's definitely the journey. And it has to be intentional. It's not just going to pop in our, pop. It's not just going to show up in our day. Yeah. And it's not just going to land in our paint.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say is like, do you know what the difference between a leader and a master is?
I feel like a leader is the one that inspires people around them. A master tries to control. Maybe. That's one that, or a master of something. I don't know. I'm curious your perspective.
Yeah, there's many definitions. This is like one of the definitions that I've kind of heard and really held on to as something that feels very true for me, which is a leader is like someone on their horse with the sword in their hand, charging forward, doing the thing with the team, like really like, putting 100%, 110, 20%, like charging forward. That's a leader. Mm-hmm. A master is sort of like sitting kind of, and putting forth 60, 70% of energy, just like a leader would, but also creating room and space for things to come to them. And so the idea that like things can like, we're not just waiting for things to appear, but there's something to be said about space. And like, again, like with Hero, like when he was crying, to just give it some breathing room and allowing for things to appear to us as well is really, really important lesson for me that I have to learn every day, because I do have a tendency to be on the horse charging forward with the sword in my hand and not taking a breath and just like knowing that I've planted so many seeds everywhere. You have to plant the seeds. Like you can't just sit there and be on your, sit back and without having planted seeds. But when you get to a point where you're like, I've planted a lot of seeds, people do want to support, people do want to help. Let me still put the effort in, but also like, let me reap this, like, let me just allow for things to show up too. Like that is true mastery. And I have to keep remembering that over and over again.
I love it. I took master as in like, I'm the master. And I was like patriarchy or something. but I do, when you've mastered, like there's like a sinking, there's a grounding, there's an ownership. Yeah. I feel like you and I could talk forever and ever. Quickly, I will say from this, I talk about it in my book, but there's this story where I was trying to get back into almost like my introduction to body work, more from like a strengths perspective, where I had a personal trainer and he's like, slow down. It's like, just give 60 to 70%. Your 100% is like the average person's like 200%. Stop it. Slow right down. I was like, what? Why would I do that? And that's what it reminded me of when you were telling the master. It's like, do less better, just, and settle into that you are enough and that you can be held and supported. And that's what all of this is about. And just leaning in and being present. We don't have to fix, we don't have to do. It's like, just show up. And a
lot of people are very bad at asking for help.
Oh yeah. I have to remind myself all the time.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Awesome. Well, it was so good to chat with you.
Yes, Miki, thank you so much. And we'll have all the links and we'll let everyone know where to find you. And I just want to say thank you. As I was leaning in, listening to you, following you, it makes me emotional because it's really about the leadership of, I think I'm just emotional as day one of my period. Yeah. But my heart is open. And I just want to say it's women like you that just lean in and do and become. That is what we're watching and that is what we're needing. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Takes one to know one. Thank you.
You may be sitting there and thinking, yes, Heather, I'm inspired. You get me. You're in my mind. But how do I do the work? Guess what? We're hosting a coaching open house. Yes. That's it. A coaching open house. This isn't a webinar. This isn't a workshop. This is for the woman that is interested in learning more about how I can support you and feeling successful both at home and in your work. There's different levels of coaching that I offer. So head on over to Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com/join. And what you're going to do is fill out a simple form, and then we're going to be in touch on the other side. I'm going to show you the back end of how I actually work with people, the structure, how people get results, the time investment, the financial investment. And not only that, we're going to allow you to experience the coaching before you even buy into it. It's emotionally uncomfortable to take this leap, to change your identity, to do the inner work, which is why we're going to offer this for free. So head on over to Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com/join. If you've been curious about investing in yourself in 2023 and love what I put out there, this is your sign. I look forward to seeing you on the inside.